I discovered my brother-in-law Jake's Reddit username accidentally while using his laptop. What started as idle curiosity turned to horror as I uncovered his elaborate plans to isolate my sister Emma from family, gain control of her inheritance, and manipulate our parents' business. The posts detailed a calculated timeline spanning years. I was torn between confronting Jake directly or gathering evidence first. Either way, time was running out as Jake's post suggested he was ready to execute the final phase of his plan. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this story so far, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe if you've ever had to protect someone you love from a hidden threat. Family has always been the cornerstone of my life, especially since losing both my parents in a devastating car accident when I was just 19. That tragedy shaped me into who I am today. Benedict Marshall, a 34-year-old software developer living in Seattle who values family connections above all else. My sister Emma, 3 years younger than me at 31, is my only remaining immediate family member. The bond between us transcended typical sibling relationships after our parents' deaths. We leaned on each other through the darkest days of grief, celebrated each milestone together, and built our adult lives with the understanding that we would always have each other's backs. When I landed my first major tech job, Emma threw me a surprise party. When she completed her master's degree in education, I was front row at her graduation, cheering louder than anyone. Our relationship remained solid through our 20s as we navigated early adulthood. I dated occasionally, but focused primarily on my career, while Emma had a few serious relationships that never quite worked out. We spent holidays together, had weekly dinner meetups, and consulted each other on major life decisions. The Marshall siblings, as our friends called us, were a package deal. Then 3 years ago, everything changed when Emma met Jake Harrison at a charity fundraiser for the local children's hospital. Emma had volunteered there for years, and Jake was a donor representing his investment banking firm. According to Emma, their connection was instant and electric. What followed was a whirlwind romance that culminated in a wedding just 8 months after they met. I still remember the night she called to tell me about the proposal. Her voice bubbled with excitement, but I felt an instinctive hesitation. 8 months seemed rushed for such a major life decision, especially for my typically cautious sister. When I gently suggested they might consider a longer engagement, Emma brushed it off with uncharacteristic dismissiveness. "When you know Benedict," she said. "Not everyone overthinks everything like you do." That comment stung, but I swallowed my concerns. Who was I to question her happiness? At the engagement party, I watched Jake work the room with effortless charm. Tall, with perfectly coiffed dark hair, and an expensive watch that he mentioned was a Rolex no fewer than 3 times that evening. Jake appeared to be the perfect catch on paper. Successful investment banker with an MBA from Wharton, active in charity work and utterly devoted to my sister, yet something felt off. I caught moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes while talking to our elderly grandparents. I noticed how he subtly steered conversations away from topics that didn't center him. When he spoke about Emma, he often emphasized how he was helping her reach her full potential, as though she were a project rather than a partner. But these were such subtle observations that I dismissed them as my own overprotectiveness. The wedding was an elaborate affair at a vineyard outside Seattle. Jake's family flew in from across the country, his parents from Florida, a brother from Texas, various cousins and family friends. They were loud, boisterous, and spent money like water. Our smaller family contingent centered around Emma, me and our grandparents, Martha and Harold Wilson, felt somewhat overshadowed. Our grandparents had raised us after our parents died. Their modest lakeside property in northern Washington had been our safe haven, and their small but successful hardware supply business had put both Emma and me through college. They were now in their late 70s, with my grandfather still nominally running the business while I helped manage the financial and technological aspects. After the wedding, the changes in our family dynamic were subtle but unmistakable. Sunday dinners at Grandma and Grandpa's house became less frequent. Emma always had a reasonable excuse. Jake had a work commitment. They had tickets to a show they were meeting his friends for dinner. When they did attend family gatherings, Jake dominated conversations, often steering discussions toward business opportunities or real estate values. "Have you considered what you'll do with this place when you retire fully?" Harold Jake asked my grandfather at a Memorial Day barbecue, gesturing around at the lakefront property that had been in our family for 3 generations. "Waterfront properties like this are going for a fortune these days." My grandfather mumbled something non-committal, but I caught the uncomfortable glance he exchanged with my grandmother. Last Thanksgiving marked a turning point. My grandmother Martha had been showing signs of forgetfulness for months, but we were all shocked when her doctor confirmed an early-stage Alzheimer's diagnosis just before the holiday. My grandfather, always the pillar of our family, suddenly looked frail and overwhelmed. During dinner, I brought up the need to plan for their future care and the business succession. "I've been thinking we should set up a proper care plan and look at the legal aspects of the business transfer," I said. "I can take on more responsibility with daily operations while you focus on Grandma." Before my grandfather could respond, Jake smoothly interjected. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to everyone about this. My firm has excellent elder care specialists and estate planners. They often work with high-net-worth clients to protect family assets and ensure proper care. I'd be happy to make some introductions." "Benedict has been handling our affairs for years," my grandfather replied with a hint of defensiveness. Jake smiled indulgently. "Of course, and he's done a great job with the day-to-day. But this situation requires specialized expertise. No offense, Benedict, but software development is quite different from estate planning." The comment created an awkward silence. Emma, who would normally have defended me, sat quietly examining her plate. When she finally spoke, it was to change the subject entirely, asking Grandma about her cranberry sauce recipe. Later, when I tried to discuss it privately with Emma, she accused me of being territorial about the family business. "Jake is just trying to help," she insisted. "His connections could really benefit Grandma and Grandpa. Why are you so resistant to his input?" It was the first real tension between us in years, and it left me deeply unsettled. Over the following months, I noticed Emma becoming increasingly unavailable. Our weekly dinners dwindled to monthly, then sporadically. She stopped answering texts promptly. When we did talk, she seemed distracted, our conversations superficial. Meanwhile, my grandparents' situation grew more concerning. My grandmother's condition progressed more rapidly than expected, and my grandfather developed heart problems that required medication and regular monitoring. I took on more responsibility for their care and business management, while Emma, who had always shared these duties with me, became increasingly absent. Her excuses always involved Jake in some way. They were traveling for his work, attending events with his clients, meeting with his financial advisors. My unease continued to grow, but I had no concrete reason to distrust Jake beyond my gut feeling. Then came the discovery that changed everything. The third weekend of April was unseasonably warm in Seattle. Emma and Jake had traveled to Portland to visit his parents, and they had asked me to house-sit and take care of their cat Milo. Their newly purchased townhouse in Queen Anne was immaculate and modern, all clean lines, neutral colors, and minimal decoration. A stark contrast from the cozy, cluttered apartment Emma had occupied before marriage. Friday evening, I settled in to catch up on some work, while Milo curled up beside me on the sofa. I had brought my laptop, but disaster struck when I accidentally knocked over a glass of water, soaking my computer. Cursing under my breath, I tried the power button, but the screen remained black. I had an urgent email to send to a client about a project deadline, and Jake's laptop sat open on the dining table. He had been working from home that morning before their departure. I hesitated for only a moment before sitting down at his computer. The screen was locked, but to my surprise, when I jiggled the mouse, it woke up without requiring a password. Jake must have disabled the auto-lock feature. After sending my work email, I was about to close the browser when I noticed one of the tabs was open to Reddit. I had never pegged Jake as a Reddit user. He always presented himself as too sophisticated for social media beyond LinkedIn, and occasionally Instagram for carefully curated photos with Emma. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the tab. The username Strategic Moves 85 appeared in the top corner, logged in and active. The feed showed a mix of subreddits, relationship, advice, personal finance, stocks, Wall Street bets, and several others. What caught my attention was one called Family Manipulation. The name alone sent a chill down my spine. I knew I should log out and respect their privacy, but something compelled me to click on Jake's profile to see his post history. The most recent submission from just 3 days ago was titled, Phase 2, Complete Isolating Wife from Brother. My heart began pounding as I clicked on the post. The content was worse than I could have imagined. Update on my long-term strategy, the post began. Phase 2 is officially complete. My wife now consistently chooses my company over her brother's. She's declined his last 4 dinner invitations, and even missed their traditional birthday celebration for the first time. When he calls, she keeps conversations brief. Most importantly, she no longer consults him about financial decisions. That's all routed through me now. The key was subtly highlighting their differences while positioning myself as the reasonable middle ground. I've planted enough seeds of doubt about his overprotectiveness that she's beginning to see his concerns as controlling rather than caring. Next step, Phase 3, positioning myself for control of the grandparents' assets before the old man's heart gives out. I felt physically ill as I scrolled through Jake's post history, which spanned over 2 years, beginning before he even met Emma. His earliest posts discussed strategies for identifying wealthy families with vulnerable structures. He specifically mentioned targeting adult siblings with deceased parents and elderly grandparents holding significant assets. The methodical nature of his plan was terrifying. Phase 1 involved winning over the family completely through calculated generosity and interest in their lives. He documented how he researched Emma's interests before their chance meeting at the charity event, which I now realized had been entirely orchestrated. Phase 2, which he had just declared complete, focused on gradually separating Emma from me. He detailed techniques for subtly criticizing me to Emma, scheduling conflicting events, and making her choose between us repeatedly until it became a habit to choose him. Phase 3 outlined his strategy to gain control of my grandparents' assets by positioning himself as a financial expert who could protect their estate. He had already begun by introducing them to his associates, who I discovered were actually friends posing as financial advisors. Phase 4 contained the most disturbing content discussions about ensuring my grandfather's natural passing by tampering with his heart medication and manipulating my grandmother's care once her Alzheimer's progressed. Phase 5 described convincing Emma to move cross-country, cutting all remaining family ties and giving him complete control. In the comments section of various posts, Jake had received advice and encouragement from other users with similar mindsets. He had also posted anonymous questions in legal forums about contesting wills, power of attorney for dementia patients, and asset protection strategies to shield inherited wealth from taxation or from claims by other family members. Most disturbing of all, I found screenshots he had saved of Emma's private text conversations with me, which he analyzed for weaknesses and leverage points to exploit. In one comment, he referred to Emma as easily manipulated once you understand her psychological triggers, and to me, as the only real obstacle to securing the family fortune. A recent post from just last week discussed a final solution if the long game doesn't pay off. The language was deliberately vague but contained unmistakable threatening undertones about accidents that could solve multiple problems at once. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. As I splashed cold water on my face, my mind raced. My sister was married to a predator who saw her only as a means to financial gain. My grandparents were in imminent danger, and according to his timeline, Jake was already beginning Phase 3 of his plan. I returned to the laptop and began taking screenshots of everything, sending them to my secure email and backing them up to an encrypted cloud storage account. My hands shook so badly, I had to pause several times to steady myself. Just as I was finishing, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Hey, just checking in. Everything okay at the house? The casual message now seemed sinister. Did he somehow know I had discovered his account? Had he set up monitoring on his computer? My paranoia surged as I replied with a deliberately mundane message about Milo being fine and the weather being nice. As I drove home that night, my mind replayed every interaction with Jake over the past 3 years, now viewed through a horrifying new lens. His charm, his generosity, his interest in my grandparents' business, All of it had been calculated manipulation, and he had successfully driven a wedge between Emma and me that now made it nearly impossible to warn her. The next morning I called Emma, trying to keep my voice casual, as I suggested meeting for lunch when she returned from Portland. Her response was immediately defensive. "We're actually extending our trip by a couple of days," she said. "Jake's parents want to take us to the coast." "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "Maybe next weekend then. It's been ages since we had our sibling catch-up." "I don't know, Benedict. Things are pretty busy right now. Jake and I have a lot going on." "Anything exciting?" I probed, hoping she might reveal something about their plans. Her voice turned cold. "Why the sudden interest? Every time we talk lately, it feels like an interrogation." This was exactly what Jake had described in his posts, making her defensive about my questions, painting me as intrusive rather than concerned. I backed off immediately. "No interrogation, Em. I just miss you." She softened slightly. "I miss you too. It's just been hectic. Let me check with Jake about our schedule and get back to you." The phrase, "check with Jake about our schedule," sent a chill through me. The independent sister, who had once maintained her own calendar and made her own decisions, now filtered everything through her husband. Over the next week, I tried different approaches to assess the situation. I casually asked Emma about Grandma and Grandpa during a brief phone call. "Have you visited them recently? Grandma was asking about you last time I was there." "Jake and I sent flowers for their anniversary," she replied. "We've been meaning to visit, but Jake's been swamped at work." "Maybe you could go without him sometime. I know they'd love to see you." There was a pause. "Benedict, I know what you're doing. Jake told me you've been weird about him lately. He says you make him feel unwelcome at family gatherings." My stomach dropped. This was straight from Jake's playbook, preemptively painting me as the problem. "That's absolutely not true, Emma. When have I ever— Look, I don't want to argue. Jake and I are a package deal now. That's what marriage is." The conversation ended awkwardly, and I realized direct approaches wouldn't work. Instead, I turned my attention to protecting my grandparents. I drove to their lake house the next day, ostensibly for our regular Sunday dinner, but with the real purpose of investigating what financial documents Jake might have already manipulated. My grandmother greeted me with her usual warmth, though I noticed her confusion when she briefly called me by my father's name. My grandfather seemed unusually subdued. Over dessert, I casually brought up their estate planning. "Grandpa, did you ever call that elder law attorney I recommended?" He looked uncomfortable. "Actually, we signed some papers Jake brought over last week. He said they would simplify things given Martha's condition." "What kind of papers?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Power of attorney forms, I think. And something about the business transfer." Jake explained it all. Said it would protect the assets from nursing home costs if Martha's condition worsens. My blood ran cold. "Do you have copies of what you signed?" My grandfather nodded toward his office. "In the filing cabinet." Jake said his firm's attorneys drafted everything properly. While my grandmother napped, I examined the documents. To my horror, they were far more extensive than my grandfather realized. Jake had them sign forms, adding him as a co-owner on business accounts, a healthcare proxy for my grandmother, and a modified will that significantly increased Emma's, and by extension Jake's portion of the inheritance while reducing mine. Most alarmingly, I found a quitclaim deed transferring partial ownership of the lakefront property to Emma and Jake, supposedly for tax planning purposes. My grandparents had owned this property outright for 40 years, and now Jake had maneuvered his way into ownership rights. I was photographing the documents when my grandfather entered the office. "Finding everything okay?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of suspicion that broke my heart. "Grandpa, these documents, did you read them before signing?" He looked defensive. Jake explained everything. "He's a financial professional, Benedict. I know you mean well, but this is complicated legal and financial planning. Did your own lawyer review them? Or did you just sign what Jake put in front of you?" His face flushed. "You sound just like your father sometimes, always thinking you know better than everyone else. Jake warned me you might react this way. He said you've been acting strange lately, paranoid even." The echo of Emma's words, clearly Jake's influence, felt like a physical blow. I took a deep breath. Grandpa, I'm concerned because these documents give Jake significant control over your assets. That's a lot of trust to put in someone who's only been in the family 3 years. He's Emma's husband, my grandfather said firmly, and he understands these matters better than you or I do. I realized pushing harder would only reinforce the narrative Jake had created about me. Instead, I photographed the remaining documents and resolved to consult an attorney immediately. That night, I received a text from Emma that sent a chill down my spine. Great news. Jake got an amazing job offer in Boston. We're flying out next weekend to look at neighborhoods. Isn't that exciting? This matched exactly with Jake's Phase 5 timeline, moving Emma across the country to sever her remaining family ties. According to his Reddit posts, once they relocated, he would complete his takeover of my grandparents' assets while keeping Emma isolated and dependent on him. I called my law school friend Michael, now a partner at a Seattle firm specializing in elder law and financial crimes. Without revealing names, I explained the situation and asked for urgent guidance. Based on what you're describing, this is a classic case of undue influence and possibly financial elder abuse, Michael said grimly. The power of attorney and property transfer are particularly concerning. If your grandparents weren't fully informed about what they were signing, we may be able to contest those documents. What about my sister? She's completely under his influence. That's trickier. She's an adult, making her own decisions, misguided as they may be. Your best approach is gathering evidence and protecting your grandparents first. Michael helped me draft emergency temporary guardianship paperwork for my grandparents and connected me with a forensic accountant who could track any financial movements Jake had already initiated. 2 days later, Emma called to invite me to dinner at their townhouse. Jake and I want to share our big news in person, she said, sounding more animated than I'd heard her in months. We're making Boston appetizers to celebrate clam chowder and lobster rolls. This matched a Reddit post where Jake described Phase 4 acceleration, a dinner to announce the move and gauge reactions, particularly mine. According to his post, if I expressed too much concern, they would expedite their departure. I arrived at their townhouse with my heart pounding but my face carefully composed. Jake greeted me with his typical charm, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends. Benedict, great to see you, man. Emma's just finishing up in the kitchen. The dinner began pleasantly enough, with Jake dominating the conversation about the incredible opportunity in Boston and the exclusive neighborhood where they were considering buying. I noticed Emma watched him with adoring eyes but barely spoke. What about your teaching position, Emma? I asked gently. You always said working with Seattle kids was your dream job. Before she could answer, Jake smoothly interjected. There are amazing private schools in Boston. With my new salary, Emma won't even need to work right away. She can take time to find the perfect fit. Or take some time off entirely, Emma added with a glance at Jake that I couldn't quite interpret. We've been talking about starting a family soon. Speaking of family, Jake said, refilling my wine glass, we were thinking about your grandparents. Given Martha's condition, selling that lakefront property might be the kindest option. The maintenance is becoming too much for Harold, and the proceeds could fund premium memory care for Martha. I gripped my glass tightly, fighting to maintain my composure. They love that property. It's been in the family for generations. Jake leaned forward, his expression concerned, but his eyes calculating. Benedict, I understand the emotional attachment, but sometimes we need to make practical decisions for the good of those we love. The property is becoming a burden, not a blessing. I nearly lost control and revealed what I knew right then. But seeing Emma's complete trust in Jake, I realized a direct confrontation would only push her further away. Instead, I nodded noncommittally and steered the conversation to safer topics. After dinner, while Emma cleared the table, Jake accidentally left his phone unlocked on the counter when he went to the bathroom. I glanced down and saw text messages to someone named Alex, discussing eliminating problems permanently and accelerating the timeline. The messages were vague enough to be deniable, but clear enough in context to be terrifying. Later that night, Emma called me in tears. Jake and I had a huge fight, she sobbed. He got so angry when I said I wasn't completely sure about Boston. What happened? I asked, heart racing. He said I always let you influence my decisions, and that I need to choose between his vision for our future and staying stuck in the past with you. Benedict, he gave me an ultimatum: either I commit to Boston and limit contact with you, or he's questioning our whole marriage. This was my opening, Emma. That doesn't sound like a healthy relationship. Someone who loves you wouldn't isolate you from family. You don't understand, she defended, though her voice wavered. He's under a lot of pressure with this new position. He says you've never supported our relationship. That's not true, Emma. I've always wanted you to be happy. I have to go. Jake's coming back. Please don't tell him I called you. The fact that she was hiding our conversation from her husband was the final confirmation I needed that the situation was dire. The next morning I checked Jake's Reddit account again using an anonymous browser and found a chilling new post. Accelerating to final stage this weekend. Father-in-law's heart medication can be easily adjusted to create plausible complications. Once he's out of the picture, mother-in-law's condition makes everything else straightforward. Wife still slightly resistant to relocation, but coming around. Backup plan in place if necessary. I realized I was out of time. Jake was planning to harm my grandfather that very weekend. I had to take decisive action immediately, regardless of the consequences to my relationship with Emma. I spent the entire night assembling all the evidence I had gathered. Using my software development skills, I created a secure digital portfolio with screenshots of Jake's Reddit posts, the suspicious legal documents, financial records, showing unusual transfers, and a timeline of his manipulation. I made multiple copies, digital and physical, and secured them in different locations. Early the next morning, I called my friend Detective Sarah Lawson, who specialized in financial crimes. After reviewing my evidence, her face grew grim. This is one of the most calculated cases of predatory behavior I've seen, she said. The Reddit posts alone show clear intent, and the financial documents demonstrate a pattern of exploitation. We need to move quickly. With Michael's help, I filed the emergency guardianship paperwork for my grandparents. Then, in a move that required every ounce of courage I possessed, I texted Jake asking to meet him alone at a coffee shop to discuss the Boston move and grandparents' situation. Jake agreed readily, probably assuming he could manipulate me as he had everyone else. When he arrived looking confident in his tailored suit, I had my phone recording in my pocket. "Jake, I appreciate you meeting me," I began calmly. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding the lakefront property. I knew you'd come around," he said smoothly. "It's the practical solution." Through careful questioning, I led him to elaborate on his plans, feigning interest and agreement. Believing he was winning me over, Jake grew increasingly candid. "Between us," he said, lowering his voice, "your grandfather's health is more precarious than everyone realizes. When the inevitable happens, your grandmother will need specialized care that the property sale can fund. Emma and I can manage everything from Boston with the right legal framework, which I've already begun putting in place." "You've thought of everything I said," watching him closely. "The power of attorney documents the property transfer." "Exactly." The old man didn't even read them properly, Jake chuckled. "Once we're settled in Boston, and your grandfather is no longer a factor, everything else falls into place naturally. And Emma supports all this." A flash of something cold crossed his face. "Emma will do what's best for us. She always does, with the right persuasion." After recording enough incriminating statements, I excused myself and immediately sent the audio to Sarah and Michael. Then I called Emma and begged her to meet me alone at our grandparents' lake house. "No, Jake," I insisted. "This is about family history. Please, Emma." She agreed reluctantly. When she arrived, I struggled to find the right words, knowing this would shatter her world. "Emma, there's something you need to see," I finally said, opening my laptop. "This is going to be painful, but you deserve the truth." Over the next hour, I showed her everything: the Reddit posts, the manipulated documents, the recorded conversation from that morning. At first, she was angry, accusing me of manufacturing evidence out of jealousy. But as the evidence mounted, her denial crumbled. "This can't be real," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she read Jake's post describing her as easily manipulated and their marriage as a strategic acquisition. 3 years of my life. Was any of it real? "I'm so sorry, Emma," I said, holding her as she sobbed. "But we need to act quickly. He's planning something dangerous for this weekend." Together we called our grandparents and convinced them to come stay with me temporarily for a safety inspection of their house. Once they were secure, we contacted the family lawyer to begin undoing the damage Jake had caused. Jake, realizing his plans were unraveling, launched a desperate counterattack. He contacted family members, friends, and even my employer, spreading elaborate lies about my mental health and claiming I was threatening him out of jealousy. But he underestimated my preparation. The final confrontation occurred at a family meeting where Jake arrived uninvited, expecting to charm and manipulate as he always had. Instead, he found Emma, my grandparents, Detective Lawson, and our family lawyer waiting. "What is this, an intervention?" He laughed, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. "We know everything," Jake, Emma said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "The Reddit account, the manipulated documents, your plans for my family." "Reddit account, I don't know what you're talking about," he scoffed. "Benedict has clearly been feeding you paranoid fantasies." "Strategic moves 8-5, I said quietly. Phase 1 through 5. The family manipulation subreddit. Your posts about heart medication adjustments and eliminating problems permanently." The color drained from Jake's face, but he recovered quickly. "This is absurd. You're talking about some anonymous internet posts. You can't seriously believe. We have the IP addresses linking to your devices," Detective Lawson interjected, "and numerous financial documents showing your attempts to transfer assets fraudulently. Plus your recorded conversation with Benedict yesterday," Emma added, her voice breaking. "I heard your voice, Jake. Your actual voice talking about waiting for my grandfather to die." Jake's facade finally crumbled. His charming smile twisted into something ugly as he realized he was cornered. "You have no idea what you're doing," he snarled. "All of you. I was bringing sophistication and financial acumen to this backwater family. You should be thanking me. The only thing we'll be giving you is a restraining order," my grandfather said firmly, "and a court date for the financial exploitation charges." Within hours, Jake was removed from all financial accounts and property documents. Emergency orders reversed the most egregious legal manipulations, though some would require longer court proceedings to fully untangle. Emma was devastated but resolute. "I feel like such a fool," she said as we sat by the lake later that night. "How did I not see it? He was skilled at manipulation," I told her. "And he specifically targeted your trust and isolated you from those who might have helped you see the truth." Over the following months, we rebuilt our family bonds. Emma filed for divorce and entered therapy to process the betrayal. My grandparents received proper legal protection and care coordination. I installed security systems at both properties and helped Emma find a new apartment close to my home. 6 months later, we gathered at the lake house for Thanksgiving, our first holiday without Jake's dark influence. My grandmother had moments of clarity where she recognized all of us, and my grandfather's health had improved with proper medication management. As we sat by the fireplace after dinner, Emma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I never properly thanked you for saving all of us," she said. "If you hadn't found that Reddit account." "That's what family does," I replied simply. "We protect each other." The experience taught me that sometimes love requires difficult choices and unwavering courage. The willingness to risk a relationship to save someone from harm is perhaps the truest form of caring. Our family emerged stronger with new boundaries and deeper appreciation for each other. That lakefront property remains in our family today, still hosting gatherings and creating memories just as it has for generations. And Emma and I have restored our weekly dinners, a simple tradition that represents the unbreakable bond between siblings who weathered the storm together. Have you ever discovered something that completely changed how you viewed someone close to you? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember to stay vigilant and trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, you might just be saving someone you love. Thank you all for listening, and stay safe out there.